Hey guys, I'm back, welcome back to the channel, and in today's video I'm going to be reviewing and ranking the latest season of Doctor Who, which is Doctor Who Flux. It has been a hot minute since I've made a Doctor Who related video on this channel, but considering the fact that the new season is out and all the episodes are out and everything, now is of course a good time to review the season and rank every episode. So Doctor Who Flux, this is series 13 of the show, and the episodes in this season, in which there were only 6 episodes, aired from the 31st of October 2021 to the 5th of December 2021. Keep in mind that everything I say in this video is just my opinion. This season has been pretty polarizing. Some audiences have really loved it, and others have, hated it, consistent with the previous few seasons of the show. So yeah, everything I say in this video is just my opinion. But we will be going over each episode of the season individually, all 6 episodes, or chapters as they're called in this season, and reviewing each and every one of them, and at the end I will be ranking them all from worst to best. So without further ado, let's begin with this video. So starting things off with chapter 1 of the season, the Halloween Apocalypse. This aired on the 31st of October, so on Halloween night. And I just want to say this instantly, I think this is a really weak start to the season. Visually, I think it's better than a lot of Series 12. I do like some of the visuals in the episode, but this episode is just completely bogged down by way too much stuff going on. There's too many plot lines, there's too much setup, there's too many things it's trying to do. This episode is just a load of setup for future episodes of this season. It's more focused on teasing events that happen later on in the season than it is on providing a coherent story. It is a bunch of setup without any idea on how to tie all of it together in a logical or consistent way, and the episode subsequently fails to be interesting. Watching the episode, I could also tell that this season was going to be the final nail in the coffin for Jodie Whittaker's Doctor. The 13th Doctor is my least favourite Doctor out of the new era, and that is because she is just such an inconsistent character and just uninteresting compared to the other Doctors of the modern era in so many ways. And this season and this episode fails to change my mind on that. And it's frustrating because Jodie Whittaker is a good actress. I think she had a lot of potential as the Doctor, but the things that are wrong with her Doctor, it's not really her fault. It's just due to the bad writing, the bad character writing. And it's really annoying because you can tell she's doing the best she can with what she has, but what she has just isn't good enough. And I also don't like the character of Dan either. As a companion, I think he's just an underdeveloped character, and I feel like John Bishop gives kind of a wooden performance as Dan. That's going to be a controversial opinion because I know a lot of people really love Dan, but I do not. Although I have to say I really like the visuals for the episode, and the thing it did with the TARDIS going crazy and the doors just going everywhere, that is a really great idea for a Doctor Who episode. I absolutely loved what it did with the TARDIS. I also think the ending cliffhanger for this episode was bad as well. It wasn't intense or tense in my opinion, and I just didn't feel anything from it. So overall, I think this was an unpromising start to the season. It's just a bunch of messy setup. There's too much stuff going on, it's messy, it's overstuffed, it's overcrowded. There just isn't enough room in the TARDIS for all the plot lines or, all the things it's trying to do. I just don't think the writers had enough skill to correctly balance or juggle everything this episode was doing, and they failed to provide a coherent story, and the episode is just messy, overstuffed, and it's just a bunch of messy setup as a result. I don't think it's all terrible compared to some of the later episodes in the season. I'm going to grade Flux Chapter 1, The Halloween Apocalypse, a C, and I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. Moving on to Episode 2 now, with War of the Sontarans. I remember something really strange happening when I watched the next time for this episode, the end of the Halloween Apocalypse. I actually felt kind of excited for this episode. I'd been wanting a Sontaran-centered story for quite a long time now, and I was hoping this episode would explain why the Sontarans showed up in the Halloween Apocalypse. And overall, I'm happy to say that for the most part, I enjoyed this episode a lot more than the Halloween Apocalypse. It's not a really great episode by any means, but it was a lot more of a solid episode than the Halloween Apocalypse was. By just focusing on one storyline this time around and not trying to do a billion different things, This episode was, it was better than the Halloween Apocalypse was. I didn't think Mary Seacole was a terrible character, but she could have been developed a little bit more. But what this episode had that I really liked is that a couple of parts of it sort of reminded me of episodes and parts from the Russell T Davies era, like Series 3, Series 4 of Doctor Who, particularly towards the end once they get onto the Sontaran ship and everything, just sort of reminded me of, prime Doctor Who. And I do like how they brought back the old Sontaran designs, the designs for the Sontarans from classic Doctor Who. Unfortunately, the episode still isn't great. It has some pacing issues, in my opinion. The pacing is a little bit messy and inconsistent. Like, it starts off a bit too fast and it's structured a little bit weirdly. But overall, I had a better time with this episode and I enjoyed it more than I did with the previous episode. I will grade it a B-, and I will give it a 7 out of 10. What have I got to say about Chapter 3 that hasn't already been said by another person on the internet? Once Upon Time is absolutely terrible. If you like this episode, then I do not have any respect for you. I'm joking. It's an opinion. You can like this episode. Like I said, this is all my opinion. You can like this episode. But let's be honest here. Who really does? I haven't seen a single list, well, maybe with a couple of exceptions. Most of the lists I've seen ranking these episodes have put this episode at the very bottom, and rightfully so, in my opinion. The problem in this episode lies in its terrible storytelling. The plot for this episode is extremely complicated, and I don't hate it because it has a complicated story. You see, when you have ideas like this, which are complex and convoluted, you need skillful execution to go along with it. Once Upon Time has nothing of the sort. The episode's storytelling is all over the place. Two words to describe it. Absolutely terrible. And if that wasn't enough, this episode has plenty more flaws to offer you. The character of Belle introduced in this episode is very, very uninteresting. And this episode also does, like, my absolute least favourite thing that Doctor Who does, which is cameo monsters. The Weeping Angels, Daleks, and Cybermen all show up in this episode for a very limited time, and they don't even really play into the story all that much. It is so frustrating whenever Doctor Who does that, in my opinion. It's fine to have good and iconic Doctor Who villains in your episodes. This season clearly shows that, but putting it in the episode isn't going to result in a fantastic episode just because it has good monsters in there for like a second. The visuals in the episode I also think are a step down. It's got some okay ideas, and the Doctor has a different coat in the episode, and that's always a cool thing. That's literally it. Once Upon Time is absolutely all over the place. It has no good execution for its very complex ideas. It has horrible storytelling, and it's so uninteresting, in my opinion. It could have been something great with the ideas it had, but it was just a difficult watch for me at times. It was hard to get through because of how bad it was.
I could do so much more! So much more! But this is what I get. My reward. But it's not that!
I will grade Once Upon Time a D, and I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 10. Moving on to brighter subjects now with Chapter 4, Village of the Angels. And I say that because this episode was actually a really pleasant surprise. Instantly, I want to say I don't think it's a fully amazing episode like I know so many people do. The next time and the trailers, for me, screamed convoluted and unfocused mess like the Halloween Apocalypse. But that is definitely not what I got. Much like War of the Sontarans, this episode benefits greatly from not trying to do a billion things and being more of a simple story and mostly focusing on one main storyline. Jodie Whittaker and the rest of the cast do some really, really great work in this episode, and I absolutely loved a bunch of the stuff they did with the Weeping Angels. Despite the fact that the Weeping Angels have been on the show for over a decade now, which is rather crazy to think about, this episode still manages to do some really great and fresh stuff with them, and it still makes them feel scary and fresh, despite the fact they've been on the show for a really long time now, and I was half expecting some of the Weeping Angel terror to be lost in this episode. That was definitely not the case. I am so glad to say that none of the Weeping Angel horror feels lost in this episode at all. Much like War of the Sontarans, this episode did some things which really reminded me of older Doctor Who, of the modern era, which I really loved. It's not a perfect episode by any means. The ending cliffhanger of the episode I didn't like it. It was confusing, it was rushed, and it felt forced. I know a lot of people really love this episode and say it's like one of the best episodes of the show. Personally, I don't think that. But I absolutely respect your opinion if you do think that. I also feel like some elements of the story drag a little bit, but still very, very rarely. Credit where it's due, though. This is still a very strong chapter of the Flux. I am going to grade this one a B, and I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. Moving on now to Chapter 5, Survivors of the Flux. And this is an interesting one for me personally, because I sort of felt like the first 15 minutes of this episode weren't too bad. I mean, it was entertaining enough, and all of the performances were quite good. Then after that, the episode goes very downhill, and it just proudly shows off the worst element of this season of Doctor Who. The episode just messily devolves into a load of different plot lines, and just forgets to be entertaining. I think the best way I can probably describe the storytelling of this episode is that when it starts off and it has a load of different plot lines, it is... it does an okay job in telling the stories that it's telling, and like it has enough energy in the first like 15 minutes or whatever, and then it's like, oh, we've started telling these stories, and now we need to finish them, but like it almost doesn't want to. There's like no energy put into the last like 40 minutes of this episode. My explanation of my opinions was about as messy as this episode is. Additionally, the return of Kate Stewart did nothing for me, and the episode just gets really, really boring. Especially in that sort of last kind of 40 minutes I was talking about. It just gets so uninteresting and so boring. I just couldn't wait for it to be over. The episode also has lots of questionable moments in terms of logic. This episode just gets worse and worse over time, and by the end I was just so bored and I couldn't wait for it to be over. So I'm gonna grade it a C-, and I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 10. So now we have made it to our final chapter of this season, The Vanquishers. Sorry in advance for the fact that my review of this is like 30 seconds long. Seriously though, I'm sorry about the fact that it's short. I don't even really know what to say about this episode, honestly. I'm still trying to get over just how much of a mess it was. This episode has got a lot of questionable Doctor Who logic. Okay, visually, this is a good Doctor Who episode. It's got some quite good visuals in there, and it has got some scenes I do like. But while it does have scenes that I do like, it also has scenes which push the limit into self-parody. Why did the Daleks form an alliance with the Cybermen? Why were the Sontarans defeated by chocolate? I don't know. I was very worried for this finale, and watching it, I did not get any less worried over time. The episode ultimately fails to provide a narrative that manages to tie together all of the events of the previous episodes in a satisfying way, or conclude the story of the Flux in a solid enough way. Consequently, it just feels very anticlimactic, and it just leaves a lot to be desired. So overall, this is definitely a very weak and disappointing finale to this season of Doctor Who. Once again, I'm just going to grade this one a C- and give it a 3.5 out of 10. So that was Doctor Who Flux Series 13. Very mixed season for me personally. Was hoping it would be better than it was, but it wasn't quite as bad as Series 11 in my opinion. But I still think Series 12 is probably Jodie Whittaker's best season. So this is how I would rank all the episodes. For me personally, it would go in last place, Once Upon a Time, then Survivors of the Flux, and then The Vanquishers. Then it would be the Halloween Apocalypse, then War of the Sontarans, and the best episode of this season, in my opinion, was Village of the Angels. Once again, this is all just my opinion. Don't be put off by it or anything. It's just my opinion. And actually, while I was making this video, the official UK DVD cover for this season actually got revealed. It's releasing January next year, and I will be picking it up when it comes out on DVD. And I'm actually kind of interested in the show again, in Doctor Who, now that Series 13 is out and everything. So I'm probably going to be getting some more Doctor Who DVDs in the future and making more Doctor Who videos. If any of you want any more Doctor Who related videos, feel free to let me know which ones you think I should do. So yeah, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, please do remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you want to. And until next time, bye bye.